have a favorite pool player? Favorite pool player of all time?
Sigel.
Mike Sigel.
Mike Sigel.
No, well, that's interesting. I want to come back to that. Is there a favorite pool player of just nowadays?
Filler?
Josh Filler?
Yeah.
What do you like about Josh?
Do like everything about what he does. You know? Even a slight little head cock is kind of like, why does he have that? You know, yeah. What's different in his eyes? You know, the other one is Morra.
John Morra from Canada.
Yeah.
I like John. He's a friend of mine on Facebook.
Yeah, John is, you know, for somebody to switch hands and still play at that level, you know, that's unbelievable.
Yep. Yeah,
John. Much nice to be able to, you know, it's a really tough one. I don't know. I'm going to play it right-handed, and then I'll go back to playing all this easy stuff left-handed. And he breaks right-handed stuff. So.
Yeah. He's something.
But it's like I said, it's really good to practice a few racks every day off-handed, so you don't have to use a bridge on the easy shots.
And you know what's interesting about your answers there? Both of those guys, Mike Sigel, Mike the Mouth, everybody knows Mike is cocky as hell. And Josh Filler is also cocky as hell.
And yes, he is. He's really cocky.
They should call him Josh the Mouth. So the guys you like are super arrogant. They're great pool players, but they can be real thorns in the side.
I kind of find it funny. I get in arguments, not arguments. Let's just call it interesting discussions, right, with people because you know there's this thing about Efren being the greatest of all time. Well, Sigel has more world titles than Efren does. Yeah. If you go back and you actually look at world titles, U.S. Opens, and all of that stuff up through the 80s, where Sigel actually retired, he already had more world titles than Efren.
I think it's all debatable.
You know, of course it is. And if people have people they like, you know, and they played in different eras. Anytime you've got, you know, the different eras come into play, and the game was different. The what you're doing is different. So, but there's no doubt that Efren has been the best player in the last 30 years. It's not even debatable.
Well,
but you have eras. Archer was the best player of the 90s, right?
Absolutely.
Right? He just was, without a doubt, the best player of the 90s. And Efren came over in 85-ish, right? And he really didn't start till the 2000s winning everything. But, you know, so it's just all different. But I'll say this, he has made more crazy shots to save his bacon than I've ever seen.
There's no doubt. Efren can get out of anything.
He is most creative player, you know, period.
And Mike Sigel is a lot of his basics were always, he was always coming up on his stick and not staying down long enough.
He would get going sometimes.
But he was always making balls. He was always running out. But he was doing a lot of things wrong. Especially his cue was always coming up like he looked like a beginner pool player. I mean, he would play like the champion that he is, but some of his basics were way wrong.
Watch his straight pull. You wouldn't see him jumping up when he was running, you know, because he's won numerous times.
I'm not taking anything away from him. I know how great Mike Sigel is. Believe me.
Yeah.
What's your assessment of Earl Strickland?
I think if he could just keep his mouth shut, because he's different. He's not just gabby. He gets hot headed, but his playing, he's second to none. He runs out just like he's not technically he's second to none. And what's really interesting is in the early years you'd see him applauding Efren and cheering him on and then later on he kind of changed. I guess he got tired of getting whooped. I don't know. We all get tired of getting whooped, but you're not going to win everything. So.
What about Shane Van Boening?
You know what? He's interesting because he has a little hitch in his stroke. He likes to. He's one of those where he comes in and then he lifts it up. Mm-hmm. So at the beginning of his stroke, he has to drop it and go back. And I've always said, I had a friend who I used to argue. I said he doesn't have a perfect stroke. He's a great player, but he's got this hit in there that you would never teach anybody to do.
Yeah, you're right.
Extra motion.
I pointed that out. It's definitely a double pump stroke where he comes back not all the way, but almost all the way.
Right.
And then it pauses, and then he comes back a little bit more and lifts up before he goes through with the shot.
Right.
So it's a double pump stroke, and it's not always real straight, and this is why he's not good playing off the rail. If he really struggles with balls that are close to the rail.
Okay.
Close to the rail.
Noticed that. Okay.
Because that double pump stroke does not work when you're on the rail. But Efren has a flawed stroke too, and so does Bustamante, and so do all these other guys.
Well, you know what? It's just like they teach in golf. It only matters that 3-inch distance. Right before you hit the cue ball and right after the cue ball. Did it go straight through there?
Yeah.
Where it went everywhere else. The only thing is that trying to have a perfect stroke should make it easier.
Right.
But Efren has a double pump kind of thing, and he's one that never pauses. He doesn't pause on the backstroke. He uses what I always refer to as like a momentum stroke. He'll pause at the front, and then he goes back and responds. He doesn't have the pause.
Oh, I never noticed that.
But there's an interesting kind of, I don't know where I read it. I read this one time. I didn't come up with this one on my own. This is pretty interesting. That Efren pauses, but you don't see it. And somebody said there's 2 ways to do this. You can actually, because the concept from that standpoint is that when you're in the backstroke, it's your tricep, and when you're in the front stroke, it's your bicep. You want to try to isolate the 2 muscles so that they're not engaged at the same time fighting each other. And somebody once said that what Efren does is, because of the way he kind of throws the cue, he gets moving the cue and just momentum takes it back. So he's not having that muscle engaged. He kind of throws the cue back and the muscle's unengaged. And then he grabs it and throws it forward and the muscle's unengaged. So that he doesn't physically stop the cue, but he stops the engagement of the muscle so that he doesn't have the 2 muscles engaged at the same time. So that we're all in, I guess, same purpose is the muscles, you only have 1 muscle at a time active. So that's an interesting thought, right? The cue still moves with momentum, but the muscle's not doing it. He got it moving and momentum has it moving. Then he gets it moving and momentum keeps it moving. But he's not pausing, stopping, and then going.
That's interesting. I've never analyzed his stroke. I was always watching his shoulder and his arm, but never actually his stroke.
Yeah, because he's one of the ones. Orcollo. I had this discussion actually with Alex. Orcollo doesn't pause at the back either. Alex pauses at the back. For Alex, he says it makes a much better difference to pause at the back and get the right stroke on the ball.
It really does.
Dennis says he can't hit the ball right when he pauses.
Huh.
That's hearsay, but that's what I was told. So that's why they're different, or why they, approach that different. But he'll stop at the front, but he doesn't stop at the back. He's backing through.
I'm going to reanalyze these guys.
Let me ask this one question. We can answer it later.
Okay.
I want to know how you calibrate on a different table. Like you go in one day and it's going to be hot, it's humid, it's wet. You're not going to get the same kind of spin you get on a dry day, or you're on a fresh cloth versus an old one. We've talked about that before. I think it'd be a good topic just to put out there for other players coming in going, why the hell can't I control Whitey today?
How do I analyze the table real quick? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a shot that I practice called the Brumback Drill. And it's just a bank shot. It's a long bank shot. I have a video titled...
It's in your video on that. So it's the corner-to-corner long bank shot.
Yeah, that'll tell me a lot about how the rows are playing. And how the speed of the cloth is playing. And from there, it's just... It's just warming up. A lot of it is doing banks. I rarely warm up just shooting balls in the pockets. It's usually banks or very long straight-in shots. And within a couple of minutes, I can tell if a table is playing fast or slow, how the English is taking. And you just have to, it's just a matter of doing it for years and years and years and years. And you go to, me and Cree used to run, and we would literally go to like 10 different pool rooms a day. And from bar to real pool room to bowling alley and just bounce and bounce and bounce. So you're always constantly adjusting to different tables and different atmospheres and different people. And you learn how to do it or you lose. You do it fast or you lose. So it's just a matter of doing a lot of it. Practice. And that's the best I can tell you is you just...
the draw shot will tell you that, or not the draw shot, that bank shot, as you said, that's going to tell you how that ball came off that cushion, what kind of speed, how much it slid, how much it grabbed.
Right, and the draw shot helps too because it'll tell you how much that table is grabbing that ball.
Right. Yeah.
You just learn to size it up real quick.
Okay. Yeah, because that's one of the things that as much as I've played on the older cloth, deflection was not a big thing, and I didn't catch on to it on the Simonis that I'm missing because the ball's deflecting. I'm thinking my stroke's screwed up.
I like deflection. I know a lot of people don't understand what I'm trying to say here, and I actually made a video that everybody hated. Called
the one that said love deflection or learn to love them. Yeah.
Make friends.
You've got to learn it or you're not going to get, you're going to have to stick in the center of the cue ball. And even then, shit slides, clings, does other stuff.
The cue ball's going to deflect. I don't care what kind of shaft you're using, the cue ball's going to deflect.
Yep.
But that's not a bad thing. You can use that to help you. I mean, it's been made out to be this bad thing to sell these shafts and all this crap. Way overpriced stuff. Because people are blaming deflection on them missing when they're just not understanding what it is. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, no, I agree. The first book I read from Moscone talked about deflection. But I never saw a deflection mess my shots up. Right? On the old cloth. It was throw. I used to love to stand playing straight pool and aim to miss and throw the ball in. right? I never aimed to deflect the ball in. Like if you look at CJ's stuff, right? And now when I look at that, I go, oh shit, I can aim this a little fuller with a little inside. And it'll guarantee the worst it guarantees that I'm adding to my margin of error.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
The shot can only get better.
Exactly. You can actually use deflection to make you a better pool player.
I know many older players they can't play. Efren won't play with it because he can't do with it a low deflection shaft, or can't easily do. Efren can do anything he wants, but he can't do it as easily with that kind of shaft.
Well, that's
It's easier
because
with a regular shaft.
he's so used to using deflection to help him that when he uses a shaft that actually works and does not deflect the cue ball, it's a whole different world to him.
So.
What doesn't Edgie Geronimo live in that area?
Edgie still lives in. I don't think he lives here. He still lives in the Philippines. He was here a while ago, but I believe he's still living in the Philippines. Santos used to live in this area. Still does. Part somewhere in this area.
And what about what's his name? His dad does the pool tables. I forget his name.
Well, Oscar Dominguez he lives up north at Hard Times, Sacramento.
Oh.
His father is still here in the South Bay area.
Okay. Oscar's a great player, man. I heard he's a nice guy, too. Is that correct? Do you ever meet him?
I'm sorry?
Do you ever run into Oscar and his dad?
Yeah. He's around, and he's got that the Mez tour that they were doing up and down, the Mez West State tour.
Yeah.
That they were doing up and down here. So
wasn't John Schimdt in that area for a while?
Yeah, he's still in this area. He's not right in the LA area, but he's still here basically in Southern California. He's about an hour out.
He was right outside Pensacola, Florida. Not last time. One time I went through Pensacola and was playing at a place called Legends, and he came in and he asked if I wanted to play, and I offered to play him something cheap. I know who he is, and he didn't want to play anything cheap. He wanted to post up and play. He was there to play, and he was there looking for me because the locals were calling him in to play me. And it was like, John, I mean, I'll give you gas money to get back home, but I'm not. I mean,
I'm not that stupid.
I didn't just get off the damn boat. And he would drive into Pensacola whenever the action came through and play. And I was just nickel and diming and playing, $5 9 ball. And he came in and wanted to play, and I said, "Look, I'll make it worth your trip and throw you $100, but I'm not going to lose thousands even." And he says, "No, I'll just practice." And that's what he did. He practiced for a couple of hours and then left. And I was like, "Sorry, John."
Well, I guess the only thing I can see on certain things like that, when those guys come in and start doing something, they don't want to end up. They're probably looking for the guys that are wanting to play for bigger money.
Yeah,
they end up playing 10 guys for less money.
Right. He thought I was a road guy coming in town. The locals blew up the story, and I was beating up on all the Pensacola local players, and they called him in saying, "This road guy's coming in looking for action. Come on and play him, John." And John,
right. So they misinterpreted your point.
I was there working. Yeah. This is what I used to do. I took my businesses on the road all throughout the late 80s, all through the 90s, and all the way up until 2003. I arranged my businesses to where I could go anywhere I want and go set up within 24 hours and start making money. And at nighttime, I would play pool for bullshit money, playing, just...
Right.
Correct. It was gravy. So my business was bread and butter that had the motel rooms paid and food and gas and car maintenance. So anything I made playing pool, whether it was $5 or $100, was all gravy that it's free money.
Right.
So yeah, John mistook me because the locals made it out to be something that it wasn't. As a road action player, you got the story wrong, John.
A working action player, a different.
A working, yeah.
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 That's what I did. I've been everywhere. I've been to 49 states. Just traveling around the country, running my businesses and hanging out and doing what I do. Total freedom, except for business work.
Is that where your little road trip stories came from?
Yeah.
With the Robb guy you've told us stories about on your videos?
Robb Browning, yeah. Robb, I first met Robb in Tallahassee, and I'm glad you brought that up because this needs to be cleared up. And it was just like this. It was I was running the roads with a guy named Cree, who actually made a vlog about DC Cree.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a very good poker player. And I was an okay pool player. And we used to just go out on the road and run the businesses in the daytime and go out and play pool and poker at nighttime. So I went into this place. It was a popular place. It was owned by some old grumpy old man who hated everybody. And it was a rainy day, so we couldn't work. And we went in looking for a poker game for him, which pretty much a lot of pool halls have poker games in the back. But this guy, we asked him, and he just jumped all over us and called us every name in the book and said he's just a pool hall. Anyway, me and Cray are in there playing against each other, just screwing around. And Robb comes in, and he goes to signs. You have to sign into this place, and he came up and said, "Which one of you guys is John?" And I'm like, "That's me." And he started asking about how to pronounce my last name, and if it's what nationality it is, and all this other stuff. He said, "You guys here looking for action?" He came straight out and said, "I'll play a race to 9 for $100." And we were pretty pumped up at that point, so I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'll play." And Chris sat down and watched, and I beat him the first set, and then he beats me the second set. But by that time, it stopped raining and the sun was coming out. That's the way Florida is. It'll pour for 15 minutes. So it's like, all right, well, you're starting to show a little too much, so I'm going back to work, and it's nice to meet you. And he was a nice guy. He was quiet. He didn't say much past how to pronounce my name. And that was it. That was it. It was just some guy I matched up with, broke even with, and that we went our separate ways. But he had already come up through the east coast of Florida. He went down the west coast, down the Panhandle. Not the Panhandle, the Gulf of Mexico area. He went down the west coast of Florida, came up the east coast of Florida, beating a lot of people. And playing in all these little small tournaments. And now he was going through the Panhandle, from Tallahassee to Pensacola, Mobile, Alabama, then off to Louisiana and Texas and all that. I was going the other way. He started using my real name. And Robb Browning was never his real name to begin with. He had borrowed that off somebody else. So I'm like, I thought it was funny at the time. I'm like, all right, if Robb wants to use my name, I'll use Robb's name. Now, he just hustles about 200 people throughout Florida the old-fashioned way. And I'm going in saying I'm him. Now imagine what's happening. He's going off saying he's me. So I ran into him here and there, and we laughed about it. I never thought much about it. Years and years and years and years later, somebody catches on to this on AZ as they're looking up background information on me. And they're saying, this guy's name is not John Disque, it's Robb Browning, and this is what he did here, and here. And it just got crazy. So now people think I'm Robb Browning. They think whoever this guy is John Disque. And it just gets completely twisted and molded, and people took from it what they wanted to take from it, and created their own shit to it, and that's it. It just got, and then I started arguing with people because it started getting frustrating. I got barred from AZ Billiards website because of this. And people would bring up pictures of Robb like sitting in the stands of some gambling match and saying that because he does look a little bit like me. And I'd be swearing, look, that dude ain't me, man. That guy ain't me all the way back there in the background. You can barely see him. That's not me there. And when he started showing up in all these big tournaments in the background looking for action. So, yeah, people just started piecing shit together. And that's how that happened. But there's people to this day who swear that I'm Robb Brown. And here's another thing that they dug up. Robb, I'm friends with Robb Sias. You know Robb Sias, the guy with the tattoos, yeah. Good bar table player. And I'm friends with Eugene Browning. So they think I took Robb's first name spelled with two B's, and I used Eugene's second name. Eugene was a phenomenal bar table player back in pretty much the same era, the early 90s, late 80s, that era right there. Beat them all. And yeah, they just started putting these things together like really like drunk detectives putting pieces to a story together and creating this whole narrative about this guy who says he's John Disque, but he's not really John Disque. He's Robb Browning.
Call from unavailable.
Does that make any sense? Did that make any sense at all?
Yeah, it's just part of the games, right?
It's yeah. But it kind of like it kind of puts me, my real name is John Disque. That's who I've always been. That's who I am. So it kind of disposes of John Disque and creates this fictional character out of him. So it kind of kills who I am. Do you understand it? It screws your head.
Well, there's two John Disques. That's an even weirder part. If we're both playing at the same place, that'd be funny.
Yeah, it's not.
Take care of that problem. Show up at the same place.
Yeah, we did it a couple of times too. But he was using another name. He that's what he would do. He'd play and beat a whole lot of people for about 2 months or 3 months, and then he'd like go to another whole new name. So he only used my name for about 2 or 3 months, but in the process he was beating everybody in Biloxi, Mobile, Alabama. He went up to Montgomery, Alabama, then came back down all through New Orleans, but he lost his ass in New Orleans. And then he skipped Houston and went all the way to Austin and started beating a lot of players there.
Yeah.
I think he's still out there using people. Nobody knows who this guy is.
Somebody's got to know who he is. So.
Nobody seems to know.
Find him at the right place. I wonder if he's carrying so many IDs, right? Or has he got his ID, but he doesn't, or no ID?
don't know.
Hard to get by with no ID. Can't
Yeah.
get in anywhere.
Yeah, I'm sure he has some kind of guide just to get in the bars and stuff.
Right.
But he enters tournaments and tells people he's. And Robb Browning is just one of the many, many, many different names he.
But one of the things I've noticed, especially on the current cloth that we're using, when I want to really draw the ball, I like a shorter bridge. I don't like a long bridge because I can hit that shorter bridge and drive that cue stick through there. And the other problem
You got
is
a longer foul.
currently we're playing with cue sticks, right? A lot of cue sticks that are called quote unquote low deflection cue sticks,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. The concept though there
There's
is
something we
that
should talk about.
the cue stick gets out of the way. You're not pushing the cue ball out of the way. The cue stick is lightweight and moves around the ball so that you don't deflect the cue ball offline as much.
All right, hold that thought, Mark.
All right.
All right, you were talking about deflection. I don't know. You lost me on getting your cue stick out of the way. And what were you talking about? I had to pee really bad.
Okay. Well, like the thing that they do there, or at least talk about from the science standpoint, is to lower the end mass of the cue. So, the cues now have a smaller ferrule. The wood is typically hollowed out to some extent, and the tip. So they've reduced the mass right at the tip. So basically, the concept is kind of like having a feather hit the cue ball and move the cue ball versus having a freight train hit the cue ball and just totally, with a freight train, it's going to smack the cue ball in the opposite direction of whichever side it hit it. With the feather, it's going to direct most of the energy forward and less energy sideways.
Is that the whole concept of it?
That's really it. That's, there's more to it, and they've played many more games, but it's not a whippy shaft. It's not like the old Beauty, where their first attempt was make the shaft soft and whippy, and it would get out of the way. But it did all kinds of weird things for me. I tried them, couldn't work with them. But yeah, that's the main thing. But a shaft is made to get the hell out of the way, and you use a long bridge. Well, as soon as you hit the cue ball, the shaft deflects out of the way and no longer spins the cue ball. So if you take that shaft and you want to draw it, you move up to like an 8-inch bridge with a good bridge that used to be taught where your hand is really flat on the table, not angling the cue stick, but you're getting go ahead and get flat. Then you can drive that Q-tip through the ball and put all kinds of spin on it. Thing is, if you don't want the energy to go forward, so that like when you bend a ball, right, the ball hits, goes a little forward and sideways, and then comes bending back. If you want it to come back quicker, jack up so that the forward momentum of the cue ball goes into the table, not forward into the object ball, and it'll quick draw back without bending. It won't go sideways as much. So, there's that's kind of cool. When I learned that one, I thought, that explains because, like I said, my grandfather taught me how to do it. He never taught me to raise the bridge up or down. All I did was jack up and down the back end of the cue. So when I drew a ball, I jacked it up. I spin the living shit out of it. And it didn't have any forward momentum. And now I can do both. I've got it to do it either way. So, but that shorter bridge on a draw stroke will make the cue stick drive through. And I don't mean a little 3-inch bridge like you would do for a little finesse shot. I'm just saying you don't want a 14-inch bridge on a draw shot.
Buddy uses a short bridge on every single shot.
Yeah. Well, he's definitely, too, from the old school of, bridge didn't need to be more than 8 inches.
Yeah.
So, even a big guy like him, he's not holding the end of the cue stick. when he's using an 8-inch bridge. So,
But I never copied his bridge. I copied everything else about his game, but I always thought his bridge was too short. If I have a long shot, my bridge is longer, and I don't do it. It's just a subconscious thing.
well, John told me, the other John, that if you have a long shot, it's just like a rifle. It's better to have more barrel out there for aiming purposes.
Yeah, that's kind of
Right?
what
Yeah. So when I have a really tough long shot, I'll use a longer bridge. You know, the old school used to be use a shorter bridge so that it's not moving all over the place.
I feel like I can aim better on a longer shot
With a long bridge.
if I can see more of the shaft.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. There's kind of two schools there, and I think if you got a good stroke, you can use the long bridge. Alex told me, like with him, he says, just because I use a long bridge doesn't mean I use a long stroke.
Yeah.
Right? You know, you might be hitting a very, very delicate shot that's got a 2-inch stroke and a 14-inch bridge, because that's what it takes to reach it. That's what it, you know, just because the bridge is long doesn't mean I'm going to draw the cue all the way. You know, that's one thing Buddy did. He always drew the cue pretty much all the way back to his bridge hand. And you don't do that when you have a long bridge. That's not going to work. So,
Right.
well, unless it's kind of like your break shot where the back end of the cue goes up a lot.
Yeah, that's a habit I've been trying to break. I used to come way the hell up on the break.
Yeah, I can never do it. I was always better with short and fast. I can go fast, but I can't. That big thing there, I just can't do it. If I just soften it up and go, I seem to hit it better.